Good day and welcome to the Power Up. We're so glad you joined us as we discuss news, perspective, information that can impact you and the community around you. I'm your host, Tami Hill Thomas, and I'm grateful with our production team to bring you a chocked full hour of information. So let's get started. Starting with some global news today. We want to elevate the humanitarian efforts continuing to take place in Africa. The African children continue to be impacted by our climate and criminal activity. And so we want to elevate it to make sure that everyone understands how you can make a difference and how knowledge is power. After five poor or failed rainy seasons in the last 3 years in the Horn of Africa, millions have lost their cattle, crops, entire livelihoods, and major outbreaks, including measles, malaria, and other diseases, are ongoing across the region, worsening by extreme weather conditions and fragile health systems. UNICEF is continuing to advocate that we elevate how important the individuals and the humans are around the world and what they're experiencing. There we go. Consider going to unicef.org, learning more about the global pandemic and how our brothers and sisters in Africa are being impacted. Many families cannot afford the basic necessities of life, including food. And the climate crisis compounds the severity of the situation, worsening mass displacement and malnutrition. It's our job to care. We can't control the extreme weather that causes climate crisis and insecurity in that area, making scarcity more devastating and consequences for women and children, especially those who might face gender-based violence. But what we can do is educate our community and each other. We can make sure that our African brothers and sisters know how much we care across the water. UNICEF.org, when you go to the website, has an opportunity for you to donate funds that goes directly to Eastern and Southern Africa. Did you know that high numbers of children and women get displaced regularly from serious conditions? And multiple children don't have access to education, causing mental health and physical health to be compounded. How important it is to just have clean drinking water. I was so proud to hear of many churches across the United States who are making efforts to build freshwater wells in Africa because we have the ability. So why not take the opportunity? Here at the Power Up, it's our job to equip you with the knowledge that Africa matters just as much as whatever country you might be in right now. And those poor babies, the children who are malnourished and undereducated, can get a little help if you could donate. Families are driven to the brink oftentimes, searching for food and water, missing school, if there is a school in the area, being pressured by child labor. Family, if you have little people that you are loving close to you, how important it is for us to think about the little people and the families that are around the world. This might be families connected to your neighbors, your co-workers, folks you worship with. You never know, because this skin is just that. We're all different by location, by background, maybe by skin color, but underneath, we're all the same. We need the basic necessities of life to exist. We have the same heart. We have blood vessels. We have organs. We have what God has allowed to be his thumbprint in humanity. And so we have the ability to make a difference. UNICEF.org, an amazing organization, again, that focuses on aid and support in the continent of Africa. Did you know that there aren't just a few countries? African acute malnutrition affects children under 5 across the entire country and across the entire continent. There we go. Do y'all know that that's almost 4.6 million people? Can you imagine neighborhoods? Can you imagine your town not being able to have water, food, education? Family, knowledge is power. Our team at the Power Up wanted to make sure that you take the opportunity to search, research, grow, and then share, be aware, and then impact change. Do you know that just elevating this in a conversation can make a difference? Do you know that helping people understand UNICEF.org and what they do can help those babies overseas? You know why? Because if it was you and your child, you want some assistance too. UNICEF.org can share information on the global impact, will give you real-time information, statistics on how the countries throughout that continent are faring and how you can help. Let's go on to some local news in the United States. Recently, locally, our country has been impacted by local hurricanes. It is hurricane season. But here's an interesting phenomenon, if you will. Flamingos from Mexico have been spotted as far north in the United States as Ohio and Pennsylvania, primarily because the powerful winds from Hurricane Idalia swept them out of the country and dropped them across the United States. Wow, what a phenomenon. Flamingos, the ones that need the tropical weather. Can you imagine that they're in Ohio, Pennsylvania? So if you are finding flamingos in your neighborhood, please do not decide to make it a pet. It is a tropical animal. Please call local services to be able to render aid. The distinctive birds have been reported along the southern coast where they're seen in beaches. So if you're vacationing and notice them, please call and report. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, even Texas have seen the swooping of 50 flamingos at a time. Nature is something else. These poor birds were swept away due to the hurricane, and now we just want to make sure that as they become American flamingos, that we can give them the care they need. The Smithsonian National Zoo is asking for your help. You can feel free to call any local animal services. They will direct someone to be able to assist you. Isn't that interesting? Now, I will share this one tip. Flamingos have also been common to Florida. Many folks may not have known that. Here, we love to educate as well. However, sadly, the flamingos in Florida have become extinct because they are hunted for their feathers. So how about we take this opportunity to welcome these wonderful creatures, to help our shores, to care for them, and to allow Floridians the opportunity to build back up in this moment. Isn't it interesting how something devastated can turn into something beautiful? Family, that's why it's important not to lose hope in a moment, because you never know the greatness that can come out of it. Florida is asking for help. All of the states, anywhere that you might see them, just remember that as they flock together, they can also not be so familiar with the terrain that their reaction might cause you harm. Best to make sure that you call for help. Family, Amazing news where we have flamingos that were swept up by the hundreds through a hurricane dropped in our area. Isn't that something? And how important it is to remember our brothers and sisters in the continent of Africa, and how you can help by going to unicef.org. Family, we're so excited. There's so much content today, more information coming. So stay tuned. There's more after this.
What's up, family? It's your girl, Terry Y. Hicks of the amazing Fab Five, and I am here to tell you to tune into the Empowered Morning Show Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the WIN Network.
Welcome back to the Power Up. We're so excited to continue to move forward with some strong content, information for purpose to help us be better, right? One human race, the better we are together. Knowledge can help with that. We're going to now move into our segment on discussing, there we go, the opioid use disorder. The fact that elevated information, statistics, and those who are impacted, we're losing individuals, not just from over-the-counter drugs, but certainly those that are illegal. So we want to take this opportunity to equip you with knowledge on how you can identify when there's an opioid outbreak, an opioid issue with a family member, someone you care about, and then what you can do to help. Opioids are a class of drug that include the illegal drug heroin, synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, but pain relievers as well. We often want that hydrocodone, morphine, codeine when we're dealing with surgery and those type of things because they help your body to rest. But individuals can be addicted, just like to the illegal drugs. So we want to help today by sharing some signs and making sure that we're all aware so that we can help when a crisis or when we see someone who is in need. Cravings and strong desire to use opioids, it's something you might not necessarily recognize quickly. That person who keeps saying, I need more, I need more. Someone who might have a bag of prescriptions and they're all pain relievers. How about an individual who has to get medications from multiple pharmacies? That way the pharmacist doesn't see that there's too much going on. Really important how you're aware and understand unpleasant physical symptoms can occur when the medication stops, just like any other addiction. See, individuals that might have it in their system might not even realize that they're addicted at some point because they think, those who are on pain relievers, that it's just meant to help that shoulder. I've always had that bum knee. Oh, I've been taking this for years. Family, think if you were the one who was dependent. What would you do? What kind of assistance would you need? Problematic pain is something that is significant to really understanding the impairment and distress of opioid use disorder. Now, we're not sharing this information to blast anyone. We understand that individuals have the right and opportunity to hopefully get pharmaceutical drugs that they need when they're dealing with a diagnosis. If you're under doctor's care, here are some tips though. Consider, especially if maybe you're a caregiver, how much of the medications you're putting in that pill container for the day and what their use is, along with the side effects. Do you know that you can take one medication and it can have 10 side effects? So all of a sudden you're taking a medication for each of those 10. And that's why you're using so much just to function. So here at the Power Up, we want to remind you that opioid use disorder is very real. If you never thought, wow, I do need Tylenol all the time, or I keep refilling this codeine, Percocet, I've just got to have it. That back pain is too much. Do you know that the stronger the medication is, there are some individuals that because you just can't tolerate pain, you feel like you've got to have it. Let me help you. Being a former athlete and someone who works closely with medical professionals, I want to help someone who feels like popping pills is the only answer. Consider ice. So there's when you sprain your ankle, when you hurt something, for athletes, there's an acronym called RICE. Rest, ice, compression, elevate. RICE. Rest, ice, compression, elevate. Things that you can naturally do to help yourself when you incur an injury. Put ice on it. That's the first thing they'll do if you sprain an ankle, if you hurt your back, if you have migraines, they'll tell you consider cooling off. If you have a fever, right? Things that can help you naturally, okay? Before you pop the pills, consider allowing your body a place of rest. And how about elevating that knee? Putting that pillow behind your back if that's the issue. Even those good old heating pads. Come on, somebody. Before you find yourself addicted. Now, with those recommendations, the most important one is consulting with your medical professional. The Power Up team is always going to remind you that there's medical individuals who are gifted, anointed, blessed with much more skill than just grandma's home remedies. Consider how they can advise you. There might be plants, things from the earth that you can eat that can help you instead of having to go to an extreme or find yourself addicted. Injuries happen, but there are long-term effects. Effects such as GI tract disorders. In other words, you have those urinary tract infections a lot because your body isn't processing all the medications. Do you know that too many medications can deteriorate your liver? Your liver's whole job is to process what you eat and take in. And if you give it too much and you're not flushing it out or caring for that organ, it can very well deteriorate. That's why liver disease and fatty livers are important to know can be an effect. Opioid abuse and respiratory systems can be impacted. That's your breathing, family. Your cardiovascular system, even your reproductive health. Do you know that depending on a drug for too long can impact you having children? Ladies, can impact your regular menstrual process, even those years of menopause. Opioid use disorder, too much medication being addicted to, can also cause falls and fractures. Why? Because some of the side effects are dizziness. Have you ever read the bottle where it says you can't drive vehicles while you're taking this medicine? You're subject to how you can fall or get fractured a bone just because you've taken too much medicine. This segment was meant to elevate this disorder because many folks do it as habit. Don't think about the effects. And we want you to live a long, happy quality of life that's so amazing that as you age, you become better and are sassy in your senior years. Come on, family. But knowing what you're taking and the impacts are what's important, can help you to be better. Sadly, infectious diseases can also increase because of opioid addiction. HIV, those other infectious diseases that can impact you, and the fact that you're not able to fight off what nature might have in the air. We just went through a pandemic. Those living with autoimmune disorders and infectious diseases find it harder to fight the common cold, the flu, yes, even COVID. Family, be knowledgeable about the treatments that are available. Abundant effectiveness can show that an effective treatment might be methadone. And here's the one that you have the power to use: Narcan. Family, Narcan naloxone is now over the counter available at your pharmacy. And it's as simple as spraying it up the individual's nose who might be experiencing an opioid overdose. Now, you have the choice to walk away. If you see someone on the ground, you have the choice to keep on moving. You also have the choice to be help that you would want someone to be for you. See, we get so caught up in judging the person instead of understanding that life happens to everybody. However people handle it in that moment, you can be a hero. There are churches now that carry Narcan. Why? Because the community goes to church. You want folks to come as they are because God loves everybody. Consider how you can be available and ready. If you're aware of someone who has a drug addiction, consider getting Narcan. Consider making sure you're CPR certified. You know how to render aid. Call 911 first, of course, and then move forward being the help. But naloxone is something that you don't have to fear. It's a simple spray bottle that goes right up the individual's nose. Let me bring the fear out of this. There are some individuals that walk around with an EpiPen because they can have a reaction to something. The EpiPen, you put it in their leg, push the button for 2 seconds, and then that individual starts to come out of it. You don't start judging them because they had a reaction. You're looking for the EpiPen. There are individuals who have reactions to seafood. They can have reaction to the pollen in the air. Some to cigarette smoke. Secondhand smoke can trigger a person's reaction. So you look for the EpiPen to help them. There's medication in it that will help them breathe again, revive, come back to themselves. Family, Narcan can do the same. Consider what you can do to make a difference where you are. Consider how opioid use disorder is just an awareness that you've got to check your medication. Get medication management. Talk to a doctor that is important to tell them everything that you're taking and discuss the side effects. Some of the medicines you've been taking forever might be the cause of something new you're facing 10 years later. Maybe your organs are now changing. Gravity is taking over. Maybe you've noticed your steps aren't the same. Your breathing, your vibrancy could be because of an addiction or even reaction to a medication. We hope this information has been helpful. Important because 3 million U.S. citizens, 16 million individuals worldwide deal with opioid use disorder. They're diagnosed to have a dependency or a need for additional assistance because opioids are something that they need to function. Family, what you need, certainly you need. Existing is important. But what we want to do is live. We want to live on purpose and out loud. And yes, sometimes that means addressing the stuff we don't want to talk about. No one wants to face the fact that I've been taking this forever. I might need to talk to a doctor about it. No one wants to discuss how they have habits that might not be helpful to their aging process. Life isn't easy. And yes, you might need help, but knowledge, understanding the effects of the help is what this segment is all about. 3 million U.S. citizens. That's a lot of folks. We are grateful that Congress is putting oversight in place for pharmaceutical drugs. Excuse me, that the FDA is stepping up to make sure that they're limiting how much is readily available, especially to our teenagers and those that are impulsive. But what you do matters. There's more after this.
Are we comparing ourselves to others or to God's assignment for our life? Our energy is best served in learning about money to make informed and strategic decisions based on our current circumstance and our future goals, opposed to creating a wealthy versus poor agenda. The past can't be changed, but we all have the opportunity to change our present and future. At a certain point, we have to accept that our parents, grandparents, and people we didn't know sacrificed their physical bodies for our economic development. They did the best they could or what they were able to do at the time. We are grown, stone grown as my mom would say, and responsible for our own decisions. As believers, we are supposed to know God is going to place the people on our path to make sure we get the knowledge needed, and especially if we didn't get it when we were supposed to. But how many know God's timing is perfect? And whether you're 25 or 62, He still wants you to prosper. Prosper meaning spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially. As believers, we should know this. And if you didn't know, you heard it here first. So the next time the devil presents you with one of his old pop quizzes that's not secret because you know he's coming, he presents to us a multiple choice question about the areas we're supposed to prosper in and says, choose one. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, or financially, we're going to overcome the trick of the enemy and write in all of the above. See, he forgot that although the financial playing field might not be level in the physical, a believer has connections to the spiritual, and favor ain't fair. See, God gave us the Bible, and our tests are always open book. You've been empowered because you should prosper.
Hi guys, it's Tina Wynn, your host of the podcast, You See Me. I want you guys to stay encouraged, continue to come out and see me, and most importantly, see yourselves. Remember, the only way that you can truly enjoy life is to see other people so that you can enjoy the beauty of seeing yourself. Come join me Saturdays at 4 on the We Empowered Network. Thank you.
Life has its way of being sweet, and life has its way of being spicy.
You did not have to hit me there.
Girl, I did not hit you.
Anywho, life has its way of being hard, and life has its way of being easy. Join us every second Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time,
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time
at the We Empower Network. Tune in to the Sweet
and Spicy
Podcast. Hope to see you there.
Bye.
Welcome back to the Power Up. We're so glad you're joining us. I'm your host, Tami, and we're going to continue to move forward with a moment of remembrance. September 11th, 2001. Terrorists linked to an extremist group, Al Qaeda, founded by Osama bin Laden, hijacked 4 commercial passenger airplanes in suicide attacks, targeting specific landmarks across the United States. The planes were flown into the World Trade Centers in New York City, into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and the fourth plane was downed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Almost 3,000 people were killed on 9/11 from this attack, including 19 Al Qaeda terrorists. The shocking 9/11 was televised globally and left with world reeling in a mirror, talking about horror and war. The impact of 9/11 will always be remembered. It will always be a burning hole for those who survived and those who lost loved ones. And we at the Power Up want to elevate those individuals and the fact that we will never forget. We will never forget 9/11 for the 343 firefighters that sacrificed their lives as they ran into the World Trade Towers, up steps as individuals by the hundreds were running down, fleeing the building. 9/11 attacks was the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And important stories are impactful to generations to come. See, 9/11 happened 22 years ago. 22 years ago, my son was 3 weeks old. His dad had gone to work as usual at the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. As my phone started ringing off the hook, not understanding what was going on, not knowing, I started to hear from individuals that because all of a sudden fighter jets were flying across Washington, D.C. We were unable to get the vehicle that was parked near the Pentagon for weeks because everything was on lockdown. As his dad shared that he stopped to help render aid to people coming out of a building that was pitch black because of the impact. We watched on television live news as the second trade center was hit because there was global news of the first plane hitting the trade center. I will never forget watching individuals live jumping to their death. Hearing stories from firefighters and paramedics on the ground who were trying to help render aid on the ground, and there were individuals landing on top of them from 100 stories up. The stories of those firefighters who sacrificed their lives, that left loved ones home. There were those who were engaged to be married. One individual story that was shared by his wife, she gave birth to their first child that very day and was waiting for him to run to the hospital. Instead, he took this call. Many stories that over the years, in 22 more years, we should still be sharing because these were our brothers and sisters. And certainly those we can't forget who helped to stop that fourth attack by taking over that plane and downing it in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The heroism of those who were all on flights just to go to handle regular business. They were in line at 6 a.m., getting on that flight by 8 to make sure they could get to where they were going, and turned out to be heroes, stopping that fourth attack that was said to be aimed for the United States Capitol. We will never forget. While we'll never forget the horror, the videos that continue to circulate, we also want to remember those who were the air traffic controllers, who had to hear these horrors, who felt helpless as they couldn't reroute and contact planes, and those who were so busy trying to reroute others to prevent other attacks. That day of horror. In Washington, D.C., the city was on lockdown. You couldn't get in or out of the city. So everyone was walking for miles on foot just to flee. The same in New York. And if you take a minute and look back at the videos in New York, many years, many months later, they were still cleaning up debris that years later, those living who were down there breathing in the asbestos, the dust, because they just wanted to help, are now dealing with health issues. Family, we will never forget. But we will also never forget the wonderful heroes, the wonderful folks who may have helped those we didn't know about, the ferry workers who were helping individuals get on the boat to get away from the city, those who were directing individuals in New York across the bridges to help them run, those business owners who were helping individuals get in their basements just so they could get off the street or get in the back room so that they could find shelter, those who did the little known heroic tasks of helping the families who knew the firefighters and still made sure to take care of those the days, weeks, months later, as we had 343 funerals just in New York alone. There were over 100 deaths in the Pentagon from the Pentagon attack. So Tami, how do we never forget? How do we honor? How do we remember? I'm so glad you asked. Family, by doing what the Power Up team was intentional to do today. Taking time, educating, and never just letting the day go by. There are many who put yellow ribbons around trees during this time every year. A moment to remember. There are many who light candles and put them in the windowsill to never forget. Sharing stories, reminding folks, my son every year shares the story of his dad. He made it out of the Pentagon, but the trauma and how he has to remember that, can't forget those sounds, the blood he experienced, helping those individuals. That is what we share. Making sure that our legacy, our grandchildren understand that that wasn't just an attack on humanity. It was an attack on democracy because Al-Qaeda's targeted us because they didn't like the ways of the Eastern world, being democratic, allowing women to have a voice, a say, an elevated space, because it was against what they believe. Our differences can be powerful when we come together. Sadly, they can be powerful when they're used against each other as well. So we have to make sure that the young ones, the teens, our legacy understands 9/11 is a day we will honor. We won't walk around just in a moment of morbidness and thinking about the worst. We're going to make sure that we elevate, that we empower, that we educate, because then the babies will grow up. They'll be grandparents. They will educate their grandchildren. And in hundreds of years to come, the fact that we stood as a country, we united arm in arm, We stood with each other. We checked on our neighbors. Churches all of a sudden were overflown with people that just wanted prayer, because humanity makes us look beyond our skin color to respect each other in spite of our differences. Tell everyone that you love. Make 9/11 a day to call. Make 9/11 a family day to come together, to unite as family. Make this a day that you remember and that you institute something new that can help elevate the cause of those who sacrificed their lives. We at the Power Up will never forget. My story of pacing back and forth with a 3-week-old in tears, not sure, unknown. My family knocking on the door, showing up, ready to just sit with me because I will never forget that moment, those smells, that fear. However, how it impacted others who might not have those individual stories doesn't change the fact that we need to remember. We need to push the cause of oneness. There are poems that have been written in memory. How about post one of those on social media? What are you doing with what you have to make sure that individuals make this day an amazing opportunity to elevate the cause of brotherhood and sisterhood? Describe to loved ones how important it is to make sure that even if individuals are still missing, because there were some that in the rubble were never found, that we elevate them so that our hearts and our families and our brothers and sisters and neighbors know we still stand with them. Goodbye is never forever. It's hard to forget someone who gave me something to remember. Sometimes memories sneak out of our eyes and they roll down our thoughts just out of the blue. But there is no foot too small that cannot leave an imprint. Y'all ought to write that down. The loss, though it might have been immeasurable, is the love left behind. In other words, that life meant something. We all have to go sometimes, right? No one lives forever. But it's what you do with what you have that can make an impact. Family, the Power Up takes this moment to first share our heartfelt love to those who might have lost someone due to this horrific attack. We stand with you. We hug you wherever you might be. And we also stand with the FDNY, the New York Fire Department. We stand with those police officers and first responders who know their brothers and sisters did not return. We stand with those around the globe who face disasters and use opportunities like this to cause for remembrance. We pause and we remember those who impacted by the terrorist attack on 9/11. May we never forget. Thank you for honoring our family. Look to more information as we move into our wrap-up. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, this is Regina Hutt, the wellness practitioner on Empowered Mornings. We'd like to invite you every Wednesday night, 8 p.m., uniquely and gorgeous, to keep your mind locked and loaded on
Hey family, welcome back to the Power Up. Wow, what an amazing segment we've had today. Intentional information to educate, equip you so that you can empower and impact. First, we started with the global news, remembering our African brothers and sisters, those who are facing hardship, crises in the continent of Africa. Thinking about the women who deal with the attacks that they receive, and the children who are missing out on education, even malnourished. You can help. Go to unicef.org. UNICEF.org takes time to educate anyone on the Eastern and Southern African impact, the causes that they're experiencing across multiple countries. Africa is an amazing country, amazing continent with multiple countries that you should take time to visit. So we should care as if they are our neighbors. So our hearts go to those dealing with all of the issues in Africa. UNICEF.org is there to help. You can donate, and your little bit is tax deductible. Come on, somebody. So it's still benefiting you to give a little. We also shared the phenomenon. There are flamingo sightings in the United States, y'all. The hurricane that recently swept up the East Coast, swept through the Gulf of Mexico, brought hundreds of flamingos from Mexico. These tropical exotic birds have been seen on the beaches of North Carolina, South Carolina, even in Texas and Ohio. Talk about a flight. Please remember to call if you happen to see a flamingo. And most important, family, we don't want them to become extinct now that they're here in the United States. Let us care for this phenomenon so our children and children's children can see them reproduce and feed off the land. Welcome, American flamingos. We're glad you're here. We also spoke about the opioid use disorder, how sometimes habits and regular things that we do can actually not be good and take a toll on this one body we're given while we're here enjoying this thing called life. How you can use Narcan easy as spraying it up someone's nose to help them come around, recover. The same way you would pull that EpiPen for someone that is a loved one you know might be having a reaction. No fear, just heroism, because you decided to step up and make a difference. Know the effects. You can go to WebMD and get additional information. You can also go to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, that's housed in NIH, the National Institute of Health. Their whole purpose is to help educate you. The National Institute on Drug Abuse can give you information on how you can help family members. If you're a caregiver, neighbors, maybe you're a coach. The information you share with those young ones around you can be powerful because you never know what they might go home to or who they might know. Your impact on one can be an impact on hundreds. Family, opioid use disorder is real, but knowledge is power. Consider WebMD and the National Institute on Drug Abuse to get more information. Two viable resources that the Power Up team wanted to share. We also took our moment today to share our hearts with those who experienced 9/11. And maybe you weren't there 22 years ago, but you heard about it. We here are going to make sure to continue every opportunity we can to elevate the 3,000 individuals who lost their lives because they mattered to families. Also, including those flight crews, right? They were on planes. Individuals and neighbors who were impacted by those lives. And the fact that we want to do what we can to stay resilient so that we don't have to live through something like that again. We honor those at the Pentagon who were impacted, the World Trade Centers who were impacted, and those heroes who took back that plane in Shakespeare, Pennsylvania, to ensure that there wasn't another attack. Wow. Talk about using your life for worth. And I'm sure it was a split second decision. You can only imagine, right? But I'm grateful to be able to say I'm an American along with those individuals who stood, took over that plane, whatever it cost, and did not let another attack happen. Family, what are you doing where you are to both elevate remembrance and make a difference? We want to move forward, and I want to share two more amazing, powerful tributes. First, we just celebrated the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. 6 decades ago, an estimated 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The march was all for jobs and freedom, to try to make a policy change. And it was, of course, most enlightened and remembered by the I Have a Dream speech by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. August 28th, 1963, a day we should remember because we should elevate racial and social equality every chance we get. We're grateful for our ancestors, our grandparents, our parents who took time to travel from all over the country. Buses. People came in caravans all over to make a difference, to stand for humanity, for equality, for equity. And we're grateful that 60 years later, the Reverend Al Sharpton convened yet another march. The March on Washington is not just significant to the African American community, because if you look at the history, there were quite a few other races that stood with Dr. King, that marched with Dr. King. Do you know that as much as he fought for equal rights to vote, that there were white folks that lost their lives trying to do the same? Family, racial equity, social justice is important. Let us not wait until it impacts you at your doorstep to make a difference. The 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Grateful that it happened again, and we can take this opportunity to remember those, to honor those who make sure that we never forget. We also want to take an opportunity to honor a specific young man. I love when we can share local spotlights. Corian Evans is a 16-year-old who was recently celebrated because he jumped into a river at 2:30 a.m. to save individuals who were drowning. He was driving past a vehicle that he saw swerve that went into a river off the water's edge in Mississippi. The driver said her GPS took her that way, so she kept driving, not knowing she was going off the edge. This young man, who could have called 911 and stood on the edge, who could have just yelled, "I'm going to get some help," who could have pulled out his phone and videotaped. Come on now. Even could have kept driving, minding his business. Corian Evans took off his shoes and his shirt and jumped in, saving 3 teenagers, those 3 girls, and a fellow police officer who jumped in to try to help. Corian ended up saving him as well. Family, Moss Point, Mississippi, the Moss Point police officer made sure to honor Corian for his excellence, for his making a decision to be the difference. We at the Power Up Thank you, Corian, for not just deciding to be social media savvy, for not just deciding to talk about it, and for not just deciding to let life happen to others, but for making a difference. He was not just honored by the police department, but by political and civic officials. This 16-year-old, his life at 16 is already making a difference to other teenagers. And Corian, we are proud of you. How about that, family? The young brother could have kept driving at 2:30 in the morning, and instead, instincts took over. Thankfully, a family was saved who didn't know they were even going into the water. What do you do with the power you have? Do you stand and say what's right? Do you make a difference by elevating a cause that individuals need to be aware of? If you see someone disrespecting seniors, do you say something? How about helping someone when you see them choking, or just even the little things that are around you? Or do you believe God has me here, it must be for me to do? Every one of us has the power to be a hero. We highlight Corian because we want the world to know his story. But we also take this moment as we wrap up our show to remind you that you have the power to do the same. A lot of times it's instinct, but there's also preparation opportunity. Are you CPR certified? Are you first aid? There are ways you can get basic information to know how you can help someone. Are you the first one to call 911 if something pops off? That's totally okay. Or do you use that phone to videotape instead of placing that call? Family, the one life you have is amazing, powerful even, but it's meant to help impact. Remember, we're not here to exist, we're here to live, and live on purpose. We thank our first responders, we thank our medical professionals, those who stand in harm's way every day. We want to thank our military and our veterans who have served, standing in harm, just so that we can have the freedoms to be able to not like each other. Come on, family. We at the Power Up are excited to have a chock full show today. Nothing but information that we hope you now take, share, impact, and then elevate someone else. Let somebody know you're doing a great job. I'm proud of you. Call me sometimes. I'm here. How about even, I want you to know you're not alone. Our words have power, even if you pause in your actions. Family, continue to make a difference. Continue to be the difference you want to see. And we look forward to you joining on our next Power Up show as we bring you more information, more education, so that you can be equipped, educated, empowered, and elevated to make a difference. We'll see you next time.